Welcome to the Time Capsule Show, where we explore the meaning of life in the 21st century through the eyes of people just like you and me. I'm Joerenz, and today we have dating coach and director of Love with Intelligence, Lily Walford. Lily, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. Your profession is so interesting, being a dating coach, and I can imagine especially during these COVID times, you must be facing some really interesting cases.
Yeah, for sure. So we've actually got a little bit of a twist on things when it comes to relationships and dating, because we use something called behavioral profiling and also behavioral psychology. So we've been actually looking at ways to actually decode dating profiles over the series of lockdown, which has been really, really fascinating. So how people can get a real good read on someone just from a few photos.
Wow, that's incredible. And I love that you're using psychology into it, because a lot of people just seem to think like, oh, you can make a pros list and a cons list, but no, there's a lot of thinking that goes into these kind of things.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also the subconscious patterns that tend to come up as well. So when we actually enter a relationship, we're actually mimicking and recreating situations from the past. So the first relationship we ever have, even if it's not romantic, is with our parents, and we actually get taught how to connect from that point. But what we end up doing is recreating those kind of connections through our relationships as well. So if you had, for example, an emotionally unavailable parent, you're more likely to go for an emotionally unavailable partner. And so there's also those layerings that happen as well within relationships that people don't realize. So there's a massive part of being able to heal. Also knowing who you're compatible with, because you can do all the inner work, all the self-development, but if you haven't got a bloody clue of who you're meant to be with or who's
Right.
going to be right for you, then it's going to feel really hard dating. And then on top of that, it's actually then moving on and knowing how to create a healthy relationship. Because again, when I speak to people and say, okay, so what's a healthy relationship? They go, I don't know, I've never had one.
That's such a good point though. You can have two great people get into a relationship, but it's about maintaining. Because I've had friends who have been like two great people, they get in a relationship and then they don't know how to like maintain it or communicate. Everything falls apart, big fights, and then it's terrible.
Yeah, well, you think about it. When we have a look at even like your own social circles, how many people can you turn around and say, oh, do you know what? I would love a relationship like them. Then you think about even like the stats out there of how many people are getting divorced. I think it's like
Mm,
50 something percent of people get divorced,
yeah,
who get married. So it shows that there's something missing for people in terms of actually knowing how to create a healthy relationship. And again, it comes kind of back to that compatibility element, because if you don't know who you're compatible with, again, dating becomes hard, but also you don't know who you can have a long lasting relationship with, which is equally as important.
that's very true. And so you have this wealth of knowledge and information. How did you get into sort of this sphere, this becoming a dating coach and then starting up this company?
Yeah. So originally I was actually an accountant for a lot of like international companies. So I was working for
Oh,
Fortune 500 companies. I was managing 16 different, accounts. So there's so many different things going on. But what was the catalyst for me was basically I had gone through a narcissistic, abusive kind of relationship and with a police officer. And after that relationship had ended, I was stalked for 5 years after that
my
relationship.
God.
Yeah. So it made me think, okay, like I wanted to understand more about personality types, more about behavior, but I also wanted to know what actually made a healthy relationship. Because I noticed even after that relationship, when I went into relationships afterwards, it was like, there's something not quite right. I keep going into similar relationships where things aren't feeling good, or the relationship isn't progressing, or there's issues coming up. So I really wanted to be able to understand what it was that actually creates a healthy relationship. And of course, when you go online, you have a look at all the different things, everything says like self-worth and confidence and do all this kind of stuff. And it's not that it doesn't have its place, but it's almost like there's a missold element to it. So I remember going in and training as an NLP master practitioner, a hypnotherapist, a coach, all these different things. And then suddenly realizing, well, okay, let's say, for example, a sheep has a fantastic sense of self-worth and confidence. The wolf over there isn't going to go, well, I'm not going to eat that one.
Yeah.
So we can control our own kind of, we can control ourselves, but it's not going to help us control other people or prevent harm from basically happening. So that's when I started going into behavioral profiling, and I met someone called Chase Hughes. And he's a world leader within behavioral profiling. He's got $30 million worth of government-backed research. He's trained, military operatives at like Jason Bourne level to be able to, handle life and death situations. So we have brought his knowledge into our business and partnered up with him, and are using this to help people date safely and successfully. Because if you've got a wolf coming at you, you want to know what you're going to need to do, but also how to even know that's a wolf, and know how to disarm it, and how to avoid being in a relationship with someone who's predatory or someone who can be very damaging to you.
Yeah, that's incredible. And so after that, you sort of like that's when you started up Love with Intelligence, right?
Yeah. So I created Love with Intelligence. Just I was running a relationship and dating business before that, and Love with Intelligence was born when we merged companies and information.
Oh,
And yeah,
that's so exciting. So it's like you joined forces with another company in order to create this sort of like even bigger wealth of knowledge and bigger like sort of bigger sort of sphere of people that can help people find love all around the world.
yeah, exactly. Because I think it becomes so important to know how to meet the right one, but also how to prevent going into the wrong relationships as well. So, for example, in the UK, I know we're a lot smaller than, than the US, but it was something like before COVID, 2 women every week in the UK were getting killed by their partners or ex-partners. And even in the US, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men were going through physically abusive relationships. And yeah, we know more than 4 people, more than 3 people, yet we don't hear about anyone going through a physically abusive relationship. So it kind of brings to light how important this work is, but also how we're not talking about it, how we're not talking about the harmful relationships out there, whether it's emotional abuse or even physical abuse. So being able to know how to heal from that and also move on to a healthy relationship is so freaking important.
Absolutely. And especially in this digital age where it makes it maybe harder to find those red flags because people can hide who they are on social media, right?
To a degree. We
Oh,
actually have very cool ways to actually identify even narcissists on dating profiles and through messages and things like that. We can even use the technology to see if someone's lying over a message as well. So
oh wow, that's incredible.
yeah. I mean, for example, when we look at language, I think what's the famous quote? I did not have sexual relations with that woman. I think that's quite a well-known quote.
Yeah.
Well, that literally just screams out deception. And there's actually 3 points within that statement that actually says, okay, this guy's lying. So when we can actually be able to apply that within the dating world and messages and things like that, you can actually avoid, again, a dangerous personality type, but also you're in this position where you can make an informed decision based on the truth rather than what people are just choosing to show you.
Wow, that is so fascinating. I have I sort of had these thoughts. Is like I figured like love. I always had this like sort of romanticize, and I'm sure a lot of people do romanticize love into being sort of like this Disney thing. Like once it happens once in a lifetime. But there's so much that goes on behind it, and I'm so thankful that you're here today to discuss this with everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, and you're so right because you think about we grow up with the fairy tales and the rom-coms and all these different things, and it's like, well, actually, love's not quite like that. We kind of need to bring the human element. Not to say that love isn't brilliant. Of course it is, but it's right when it's with the right person. And it's not so great when it's not the right person.
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right, so let's say you were pursuing a different path from being a dating coach. What do you think you would be doing, and why would you be doing it?
Wow. Yeah, it's quite funny because I've got two other businesses on top of this as well. And I think my main driving force is around connection. Because I think so many people have like literally lost the ability or the know-how to connect. I sort of grew up with a little bit of like social anxiety and kind of learning like one of the reasons behind that was basically because I didn't know how to connect with people. And I think when I look around now, it's made me realize how disconnected so many people are, not just from each other, but to themselves as well. So I think a lot of the work that I love to be able to do is just help people to have better relationships, whether it's romantic, whether it's friends, family, or even with themselves. I think that's just so important.
Do you ever think you'd want to open up like a branch for your business to help people just connect as friends?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do, so we've also got a company called NLP with Intelligence. So we
Oh,
actually teach a lot of the NLP tactics of how to actually, not only just become a coach, but how to become someone who can really connect and help people live the best lives. And then the other side of things of what I do is I have a leadership company, and we're currently training people to become fantastic leaders, to empower people. Because again, within the corporate world, it's turned so narcissistic in terms of control and what they're actually expecting from people. So we're bringing back like the human element that needs to be there in order for people to feel able to be themselves, but also to give them the freedom to be able to do the best they can in those, in roles within the company as well. So, which is just so, so important. And it all stems from being able to connect better with people and to connect better with yourself.
it's absolutely fantastic. And that's so interesting that you say that about the corporate world. I feel like a lot of people feel like that's how corporate is. It sort of takes away the human element. You're stuck into a cubicle working on numbers, and then you sort of like let life like sort of, I don't know, disconnects you from the rest of the world and what it's like. And we've even seen in some cases morals become incredibly loose, and we have things like the environment being woefully affected by it.
Yeah, exactly. I think as well, there's this big, there's a lot of pressure within the corporate world. So it's quite funny because I do a lot of work around narcissistic abuse. Also do a little bit of work around understanding cults, which is quite interesting when you start to look at the corporate world. And what you tend to find is, in terms of being able to influence an environment, you create sort of unwritten rules. So, for example, within the corporate world, if you leave before 5 o'clock, you're a part timer. It's not written in the contract, but it's that kind of feeling like you're going to you're going to be looked down upon for leaving your team early. So, what tends to happen is, with those kind of pressures collectively put on each other as a team, you're already being influenced to be able to work more and focus more on the company rather than focusing on yourself. So you end up becoming quite disconnected to yourself. And also you're treading on eggshells if you have any beliefs that are outside of what the company believes in or the leader believes in. And it's the same with relationships. As soon as we have that kind of energy within relationships where you can't be seen, where you can't be heard, where you can't be fully open, where you don't have the freedom to be independent, it's damaging. But we're seeing this all over the place. When we talk about connection, the way it starts with family first, we see the way that it doesn't just impact the family, it impacts the relationships, it impacts the friendships, it impacts the corporate world, the career element of our lives as well. So it's
That's
huge.
so, yeah, that's so true. And then people think like you were saying, like people think they have to change themselves to become someone else, but really it starts at a place of knowing who you are and then letting who you are and your genuine self add value to wherever you go, whether that's a relationship, whether that's work, and even maybe even starting your own family.
Exactly. I think this is the thing, most people don't have the permission to be themselves. And I think that's where the massive impact, the massive amount of becoming like disconnected from yourself happens. You know, if you're in a place where you're suddenly going, oh, do you know what, I'm not in the mood to kind of work, or I've got a migraine, or all these issues are going on, and you're not in that place to be able to work at your best potential, you know, you're then kind of being forced to override what you actually need or what you actually want or desire within that moment to go ahead and fulfill someone else's needs. So there's so much around this that's so important when it comes to identity, building yourself up, being connected with yourself, and actually having the permission to do that as well.
Absolutely. All right, so we're now at the segment of the show we like to call Past, Present, and Future, where we're going to be exploring 3 different periods of your life. So, how do you see yourself now? How does this compare to the person you were 5 years ago? And how do you think things are going to be for you in the next 5 years?
Ooh, so how do I see myself now? Gosh, that's such a good question. I would see myself as someone who's done a lot of work but still open to learn, because I think we never ever ever stop learning. I think the moment we stop learning, we're dead.
Absolutely.
And gosh, yeah, I would just say someone who's very determined to be able to help more people to be able to connect better, like I said, whether it's relationships, work, whatever it might be, because I think that's just such an important element to everyone's life. Our lives would be nothing without other people. What was the second question?
How does the person today compare to the person you were 5 years ago?
Massively. So 5 years ago, oh, goodness me. Yeah, 5 years ago, honestly, I was very disconnected. I hadn't even stepped foot in the personal development world. I didn't really sort of look into self-love or confidence or anything like that. I thought having a coach meant that you were weak. You know, I couldn't have been so far removed from where I am at this moment in time now. But the interesting part as well was because I was so disconnected from myself, I was disconnected from my goals, the things that I wanted to go ahead and do. And also I was disconnected from the lack of satisfaction in my life. You know, when you sort of like achieving goals and they just feel empty. And it was like, that was constant. I was working in a high flying career. I think at the time I was actually living in a four bedroom detached house, 2 brand new Mercedes on the drive. I was working for a massive Fortune 500 company, and life felt flat. And the funny thing is you know, we are our own limits. We limit ourselves in such a huge way when we're disconnected to ourselves, because it's like, yeah, okay, that looks successful on the outside, but if you're not really living your life on the inside, there's no freaking point.
So true.
But the nice thing is I'm more successful now where I am now. I'm more fulfilled now, and I actually get to live a life with a bit of purpose behind it, being able to help other people heal, people connect, and just have better lives and better relationships.
That's fantastic. And then how about the next 5 years? What do you think 5 years in the future is going to look like?
5 years in the future. Gosh, it's going to be interesting listening into this back, isn't it? I would say 5 years in the future. Oh, goodness me. Yeah, I can see being able to, well, we're actually looking at creating a matchmaking business. So helping people with behavioral profiling and, you know, being able to make more fantastic long-term relationships for people. I think a lot of work that we're doing around, you know, helping people have better relationships, I can see that really expanding, especially over the next 5 years. So I think, plus there's just so much purpose and so much pleasure that I get personally out of that. And yeah, I'm currently writing a book as well. So hopefully best-selling author, massive company, still helping people to connect, and a lot of personal development and growth along the way.
That's awesome. And that's fantastic to hear about the book. If it's anything like we've been discussing now, I'm so looking forward to reading it.
Thank you. Yes, it's literally going to have a lot around the behavioral profiling, a lot about uncovering childhood patterns and being able to have more connected relationships.
That's amazing. And so we've discussed a lot. This is sort of like a recurring theme that's come over and over about connecting to people, then helping others connect to others. So what principles would you say you live your life by? Would connecting be one of those principles?
Yeah, and I have this firm belief that we can only connect to someone as deeply as we are connected to ourselves. And if you're not fully connected to yourself, forget trying to connect to someone else. And if that person's not fully connected to themselves, you're going to really struggle to connect to them as well. So I think that's such an important element. It's like that cheesy line, it all starts with you, and it's so freaking true. So I'd say that's such a core element. I would also say identity. Your identity is so freaking precious. And I think it's something that people tend to overlook, because the way that you see yourself will determine how successful you are within your career, but also your relationships as well, and what you will allow in your relationships as well. What will you actually allow in your life? If you see yourself as someone who's fantastic, someone who's loving, someone who's confident, you're going to accept less rubbish into your life than someone with really low self-worth and low self-esteem. So when I say about nurturing that identity, it's basically having those boundaries away from people who put you down. Because if you're being put down in your career, or you're being put down by parents or friends, even if it's just in a funny way, that has such a huge knock-on effect on everything within your life. I mean, this is how narcissistic relationships work, cults work. They bring in these one-liners where they put people down, and it doesn't have to be something huge. It can be the smallest of lines, oh, you're so insecure. Something as simple as that can play on someone's identity and have a huge impact on everything. It's a huge ripple effect on their life.
That's so true. And like I remember growing up and being Filipino, like there's this sort of like phrase that they have that kind of means healthy, but it also like on the other hand it also means fat. So when they would see like my aunts and uncles would see kids, they would go like, "Oh, they're like," they would say that word, but then a lot of kids and would take it as my cousins would take it as, "Oh, they're calling me fat. They're calling me like, oh, unworthy or
Oh,
something." And it sort of turned into this like really hateful thing, even though the word really meant something else. And so even I grew up like didn't not liking myself for like my weight and being super insecure about that. And so those things that it just stems from childhood and then it grows into you. And it's just like at a certain point when you grow up, you got to decide, I got to cut that out of my life. I got to not let that affect me. I got to find a new way to really grow and really love myself.
yeah, exactly. And it has a huge impact, even if the intention was all good and everything, when, like you're saying that word. But yeah, it just has such a massive impact. And you think now, even as an adult now, looking back at that, it still has an effect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that can have such a huge impact on us. It really, really can.
So speaking of impact, I'm sure you've had a great impact on other people's lives, but I have to ask, like, what's impacted you in your life? What would you say you're grateful for in your life?
Oh gosh. So much. Yeah, where on earth do I begin? I'd say I am so grateful for the people that I've got to learn from. I've literally, learned from Chase, who's a world leader. I've managed to work with some fantastic mentors, and I think we have this huge culture where we need to be like independent and doing everything on our own. We can never do everything on our own. And it's like, being able to have that opportunity to stand on the shoulders of giants is the place where we can grow. So whether it's reading a book, whether it's having a mentor or anything like that, I think is so freaking powerful. So I'd say there's that I'm really grateful for. I'm also grateful for my partner because, again, we're both in the behavioral profiling world. We've learned so much from each other. We've gone through lockdown together somehow. I don't know how. but it's being around people, we get to learn so much from people. I'm even grateful for the crappy bosses that I've had in the past as well, because again, from that discomfort, we're able to grow. From even down to the narcissistic relationship I had where I was stalked, I'm grateful for that, because again, if I wouldn't have gone through that, I wouldn't be where I am now. So I think everything that's brought me to this very moment, yeah, I am completely grateful for.
That's absolutely incredible. And that's so true about like, if you don't go through like hardships or pains, then you can't really grow. That's where it's like at those deepest points where we like find ourselves, we find that inner strength and we grow and change. Well, not necessarily change, but become stronger as a person.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's those moments where you turn around and say, I can't stay still. I can't carry on within this moment right now. So I need to either, suck it up, or I need to grow and I need to move on. And it also gives you that chance to even reflect as well. Because when you have to grow, when you have to move on, it's like, okay, what am I moving towards? What's the thing that I'm going to feel so excited and so passionate about moving towards? And then when we know that we're moving towards something like that, yeah, it makes it a lot easier to leave that past behind.
Absolutely. And speaking of the past, I'm so glad to hear that now you're in a happy relationship after hearing those stories about, especially that guy that stalked you. That was crazy.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, it's so typical for narcissistic relationships as well. So a lot of people that I work with who've gone through narcissistic and even psychopathic abuse, it's incredible. You have people who've nearly been set on fire or their lives have been at risk. And when we talk about the identity piece as well, their identities have literally been stripped bare, where they've to the point where they've really had to rebuild themselves up to be able to be in a healthy relationship, to be able to trust again, to be able to enjoy their lives in every aspect, and also to enjoy a healthy relationship too.
That's true. All right, so now we're at the question of the show where we get our title from. If you were to leave something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
Oh gosh. I would probably, it's gonna sound really cheesy and really sad, but I love the quote, life is what you make it. And it probably wouldn't be any sort of gadget or anything like that. It would probably be the quote of just life is what you make it, because it is. Literally everything in life is a story that we tell ourselves, or everything that we've got to this point is from what we have created out of our lives, from the things that we've gone through, from the thoughts that we've had, from the values that we've had. And I think it really creates the way that we view ourselves and the way that we view just life in general and other people. Because if we're judging ourselves, we can guarantee that we're judging other people. If we're in a place where, like, for example, a lot of people that I've worked with who have gone through abusive relationships, they look back and they go, oh gosh, why have I done this? Why did I stay in that relationship so long? And I feel so sad and frustrated and angry with myself. And it's being able to, with life is what you make it. It's being able to reframe the story and say, well, what would happen if someone was so strong that they stayed in that relationship because they loved that person, and they did everything they could to be able to make that relationship work, but the other person didn't do the same. But how strong is that person to be able to hold that space to do that and to be able to leave that relationship and to be able to grow as a result?
That's an amazing thing to put in the time capsule. And it's such a phrase that rings true no matter what age of history you're in. Life is really what you make, and it's up to you how you wanna what you want to do with your life, what meaning you want to give. Things don't necessarily give you meaning. It's like you got to decide for yourself, like, this is what I want to do with my life, and I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, we've all got that potential to do that. We've all got the potential to do that. It's just the stories and the things that we tell ourselves that make the difference.
Absolutely. So we're pretty much at the close of the show. Is there any final words you'd like to add for our viewers? Maybe some words of advice, or maybe something you'd want your future self to hear you saying 5 years back?
I would say that for viewers, I would say
really hone in on the story that you're telling yourself about yourself, because that's such a game changer. You know, if you're seeing yourself as weak or seeing yourself as unlovable, change it. What part of you is so lovable? What part of you is so strong? What part of you are you so proud of? Because when we see ourselves in that light, we can value ourselves more, and it's going to have such a huge impact on the rest of your life, whether it's career, family, friends, relationships. And it's really the core element of living your life to the full.
I love that. And I wish I could have heard something like that when I was like 5 years back.
Me too.
All right. So where can people find you on social media, and where can people learn more about Love with Intelligence?
Yeah, so with Love with Intelligence, you can find us on lovewithintelligence.com. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, Pinterest, LinkedIn, I think most of the major social media channels. And yeah, just feel free to follow us on there.
Awesome. Well, Lily, thanks so much for being a part of our time capsule. Thank you
Oh,
to all our viewers for watching, and please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and follow Lily and Love with Intelligence on all their social media channels. Tune in again next week to meet another amazing addition to our time capsule. We'll see you all next time.